So far, we've focused on gratitude for external situations and events and for other people. But today I want to kind of turn the focus inward and look at the benefits of practicing gratitude for the self. And I hope you forgive me a slightly longer video today because I think this is an incredibly important topic. We've spoken about the human negativity bias and the way in which this bias often leads us to evaluate external situations more negatively than is useful. So this negativity bias also influences the way we evaluate and relate to ourselves. So we all have this inner monologue or voice that we use to plan and solve problems. So as we move through our day, we think things like, okay, I need to be ready by 9. Where did I put my navy shirt? But we also use this voice to analyze and assess our own behaviors and our self-worth. Sometimes this internal voice can be positive and supportive, so it helps us to kind of calm our worries or boost our confidence. So we might say to ourselves, come on, you've got this, just 3 more days. You've gotten through tougher things than this. But because of our inbuilt negativity bias, for many of us, this internal voice can also often be negative and self-defeating. So we might say, why did you do that? You're always making stupid mistakes. Or I hate the way I look. I wish I looked differently instead. Research suggests that our internal dialogue has a significant impact on our mental and physical health, our relationships, our productivity, our ability to manage stress, our workplace and sporting performance, our body image, even our ability to manage health behaviors such as eating and exercise. So what does this negative self-talk look like? So although a certain amount of self-criticism is going to be useful, right? So we need to be able to identify our real weaknesses so we can find ways to grow and improve. When we place too much weight on that inner critic, it can start to distort the way we see things, and we can view ourselves in an extremely negative light that just doesn't reflect reality. And we start to see these biases emerging. So we start to see these sweeping overgeneralizations like, I can't do anything right, no one really values me. Another example is labeling and mislabeling. So this is where, rather than focusing on an individual behavior, we overgeneralize our criticism to our entire character. So instead of saying, I struggled with getting the hang of that particular task, we might say, I'm hopeless or I'm stupid. So we're placing a label on our entire character. I've included a list of 10 of the most common internal biases we see as a bonus material in the download section if you're interested. So where does this voice come from and what determines its character? The relative level of negativity in our internal voice is influenced by a huge range of factors, including that natural human negativity bias, our self-image and self-worth, conscious and subconscious beliefs about ourselves and the world, the way we respond to and internalize the evaluations and criticisms of others, and a load of mental biases that are sometimes useful, but at other times kind of distort the way we see reality. One of the most interesting examples, I think, is something called emotional reasoning, where we assume our emotions are the best guide to decide what reality really looks like. So this is where we think, I feel it, therefore it must be true. We feel sad and we feel like everything is awful and unsolvable, and so we assume that means everything is really awful and unsolvable. Or we feel like people don't like us or we're unlikable, and then assume that means it's true. The problem with this is that our perceptions of reality are often extremely inaccurate, so much so that there's now a huge body of research warning against relying on eyewitness testimony in criminal proceedings. So firstly, our brains only notice a small fraction of what's happening around us. We can only mentally attend to a limited amount of information at any one time. So our brains have to decide which piece to take in and which pieces to ignore. So to begin with, our perception of reality is based on a very incomplete picture of what's happening because we're kind of cherry picking which pieces of data to pay attention to. So secondly, what we do attend to is heavily influenced by our emotions, our existing beliefs about ourselves and the world, and a huge range of cognitive or mental biases. How we interpret that small amount of information we actually take in is heavily affected by these same factors. In addition, our memories are incredibly inaccurate. So which bits of information we recall most readily and how we remember that information is also affected by how we're feeling, our pre-existing beliefs, our natural biases, our social influences, our culture. And then in addition, your conscious mind is kind of like the Google search bar, and your subconscious mind is kind of like Google Images. So because of the way memories are formed and stored in the brain, the language we use when we talk to ourselves determines the emotions, thoughts, and memories that come to our conscious mind.
So the internet is this huge collection of articles, web pages, videos, songs, images, some of which is relevant to us, some of which isn't, some of which is really positive, some of which is not such a positive influence. And we use Google or other search engines to uh, tell the internet essentially what we want access to or what we want to see. So our minds are similar to this. Our minds are really just these massive collections of thoughts and memories and experiences and beliefs. So if I type into Google cats are funny, Google Images is going to say, yeah, they are, and here's all the reasons why. And it's going to pump out all of these different photos giving me examples of when cats are really funny.
So similarly, if you're saying things like, I'm always so inadequate, your subconscious mind is going to say, yeah, you are, and here's all the reasons why. If you think, I didn't do well today, but there are some things I'm good at and that I do well at, your subconscious mind is going to pull up thoughts and memories about the times you have done things well. Further to this, if there are gaps in our memory, our brain often just fills in the gaps without us knowing it. So for example, we might remember a criminal on the television as having had tattoos, even if they didn't, because we might associate tattoos with criminals. Or we might remember someone as having glared at us when they didn't, because of our prejudgments either about them or about ourselves. So the end effect of all of this is that reality is incredibly subjective. And the way we see the world and ourselves is as much the result of our unique internal storytelling and perception as it is a reflection of objective truth. So we're walking around telling ourselves these stories without even knowing it, and the quality of these stories powerfully affects the quality of our experiences. So where does gratitude come into all of this? Practicing gratitude can be really useful in providing some balance to that internal narrative. So when our brains are developing these internal dialogues and narratives, they can only use the information or input that's available to them. And if the only things your brain is taking in are photoshopped Instagram models and people's criticisms and our own criticisms and our socially conditioned beliefs about what we're supposed to look like, then that's all our brain has to work with when it writes this story about us and about the world around us. So in today's challenge, we're going to focus on providing our brains with some more balanced information so they have a little bit more to work with. And that's with all of our practices. This isn't about trying to lie to ourselves or kind of force positivity down our own throats. It's just about taking a little bit more of a balanced approach to things.